If you're a teenager who wants to start lifting but you've been holding back because you're scared it's going to stunt your growth, this video is for you. Honestly, this might be the most important fitness video you watch as a teen because this myth is literally stopping people from making the best decision of their life. Your parents might have even told you not to lift because it will stunt your growth. Your friends might have said it. Maybe a teacher or a coach said it. And I get it. When you hear something like that, especially from people you trust, you take it seriously. But here's the damn truth. This is one of the most persistent myths in fitness and has zero solid scientific backing behind it. I'm going to break down exactly why weight training doesn't stunt your growth and how your body actually grows taller, what actually could be a risk, and why lifting as a teenager is one of the best things you could do for your body. By the end of this video, you'll never second guess picking up weights again. Let's get into it. Alright, before we can even get into the science itself, let's talk about where the myth even came from, because understanding why people believe this helps you understand why it's wrong. The idea that lifting stunts your growth has been around for decades, and honestly, it makes surface level sense when you think about it. You hear things like, heavy weights compress your spine, or lifting puts too much stress on your young bones, and it sounds scary enough that most people just accept it and move on. Part of this also comes from the growth plate conversation. You've probably heard of growth plates. Those are the areas in your bones responsible for making you tall. And somewhere along the way, people start connecting weight training to growth plate damage, and that connection just kind of stuck in popular culture. But here's the thing. Just because something sounds scary doesn't make it true. And when you actually look at the research, the real science on this topic, the picture looks completely different from what most people believe. There's also a generational thing happening here. A lot of older parents and coaches grew up in an era where weight training for kids was generally controversial and not well understood. So they passed down this warning to protect their kids, even though the science has long since caught up and debunked the concern. I'm not saying your parents or coaches are bad people for telling you this. They were just looking out for you based on what they heard. They were misinformed. But we're going to look at the actual evidence today. I think it's going to completely change how you think about this. Okay, so to understand why lifting doesn't stunt your growth, you need to understand how your body grows in the first place. Once you understand the mechanism, myth falls apart on its own. And this is actually pretty fascinating stuff. Your height is determined by the lengthening of what are called your long bones. These are the big bones in your body. Your upper arm bone called the humerus, and your forearm bones called the radius and ulna. Thigh bone called the femur, and your lower leg bones called the tibia and fibula. Now at the ends of all these long bones, these are what we call growth plates. And growth plates are literally zones of cartilage, soft growing tissue. During childhood and through puberty, these growth plates are actively building new cartilage, which then hardens and gets converted into actual bone tissue. The process of cartilage building and hardening is what makes your bone longer over time, which is what gets you taller. When puberty is complete, and this happens at different ages for different people, usually somewhere between 16 to 21, depending on your genetics, those growth plates actually close. They essentially lock in place. And once that happens, you don't grow any taller. The bones can no longer lengthen because the growth plates are no longer active. This is why people like clavicular stress about the growth plate closing so much, because after the growth plates close, you can't really look smacks in the same notable way as when you were when the growth plates were still growing. Most people, though, try to do stuff when it's too late. So everything about your vertical growth, how tall you're going to get, is determined by those growth plates. Genetics tell your growth plates how much to grow and for how long. Your nutrition supports that process. And your hormones, specifically growth hormone and IGF-1, communicate with those plates to drive the lengthening process. Here's where the myth breaks down. The question isn't, does exercise affect your body? Of course it does. The question is specifically, does weight training damage or negatively affect those growth plates in a way that would stop you from growing? And the answer, based on extensive research, is no. Not when done properly and responsibly. Even the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is literally the organization of doctors who specialize in children's health, has stated that appropriate training programs have no apparent effect on linear growth plates, or the cardiovascular system in young people. Where does height actually come from? It comes from your genetics primarily. Your parents' height is the biggest predictor of your height, and it's driven hormonally. Growth hormone and IGF-1 are what actually talk to your growth plates and tell them to grow. As long as you're getting proper nutrition to support those hormones, which most people don't do, your height will simply follow whatever your genetic blueprint is. Everyday activities, including weight training, are not going to allow you to increase or decrease your natural height in any meaningful way. Now, I want to be real with y'all here, because I think intellectual honesty matters. While the research is clear that proper weight training doesn't stunt growth, there's one scenario where a risk does exist, and that's serious sudden physical trauma to a growth plate. If you were to actually break a bone at or near a growth plate, like if you dropped a barbell on yourself, or you tried to max out with an absolutely ridiculous weight using terrible form and seriously injured yourself, that kind of direct damage to the growth plate could potentially affect its function. But here's the important context. This isn't really a weight training problem. This is an injury problem. And weight training, when done properly, is actually one of the safer physical activities you can do. Think about it. Football players collide at full speed and risk serious bone injuries. Basketball players jump and land awkwardly. Wrestlers, gymnasts, martial artists, all of these activities carry real injury risk to bones and joints. Weight training, when you're following a real program, using appropriate weights for your level, learning proper form, and not doing obviously reckless things like trying to max out when you're training, injury rate is actually really low compared to most sports. Beginner, there's absolutely no reason to be going anywhere near your max on any exercise. You should be focusing on learning the movements, building the mind-muscle connection, developing your technique. Weights should feel challenging but controlled, not like you're one rep away from catastrophe. If you can do that, and it's not hard to do, then the growth plate injury risk from weight training is essentially non-existent. You're more likely to hurt yourself playing video games from sitting for 10 hours than you are from a properly structured beginner weight training program. So yes, be smart, be safe, learn proper form, but no, do not use the fear of sudden growth as an excuse not to lift, because when done right, it's just not a real concern. Let's talk about the actual research here, because I don't want to just tell you weight training is safe. I want to actually show you why the evidence supports it. The scientific committee has been studying youth resistance training for decades now, and the consensus is remarkably consistent. Properly supervised and programmed weight training is not only safe for teenagers, it's actually beneficial for their development. Multiple large studies have looked at young athletes who train with weights regularly, things like Olympic lifters who start training seriously as young as 10 or 11 years old, and consistently, these studies find no evidence of compromised growth or height outcomes. In fact, some research suggests that weight-bearing exercise and resistance training may actually have a positive effect on bone development. The mechanical stress that weight training puts on bones can stimulate bone density and strength, meaning your bones might actually come out stronger from training, not weaker. Unfortunately, myself, I played video games for years and years, so my muscles, especially my glute muscles and hamstrings, are incredibly tight, and they have still not fully recovered. I really wish that I had never have done that, but hey, we're trying to reverse it now, right? All this makes biological sense because your body adapts to the demands placed on it. When you consistently apply safe, progressive mechanical load to your bones through resistance training, your body responds by making those bones denser and stronger. That's adaptation, not damage. Now, I want to be transparent. Science is never 100% settled on anything. It would be intellectually dishonest to say every single researcher agrees on everything in this space, but the overwhelming weight of evidence is clearly in one direction. Weight training done properly is safe for teens, plain and simple. The myth persists not because of science, it persists because of word of mouth, outdated information, and people being scared of things they don't understand. Okay, so now that we've fully buried the myth, let me tell you something way more exciting. Lifting as a teenager isn't just safe, it's one of the greatest advantages you can give yourself. And I mean this, starting to train seriously as a teenager puts you years ahead of people who don't start until their 20s or later. Let me break down exactly why. First, your hormones are literally optimized for building muscle right now. During puberty, testosterone, growth hormone, and IGF-1 are surging through your body. These are the exact hormones that drive muscle growth. When training as a teenager, you're essentially combining a serious training stimulus with a natural hormonal environment that's primed for muscle building. Most guys in their 30s would give anything to have this natural hormonal profile that you have right now as a teenager. Paying for hormone therapy and peptides and all kinds of this stuff to try to recreate what you naturally have, so use it. Second, your recoverability is insane right now. Teenagers recover faster from training than almost any other demographic. You can train harder, more frequently, and bounce back faster than adults. You'll be less sore, recover between sessions quicker, and see faster progress as a result. But don't get this twisted, still can overtrain, so obviously recover when necessary. I recommend 4 days a week for a split. You can push 5, but never do 6 days a week. You can even do 3 as well. Third, you're building a foundation that compounds, right? Every month you spend building muscle and strength as a teenager is a month of muscle memory and physical development that stays with you. By the time you're 20, you could have 4 to 5 years of serious training under your belt while your peers are just starting. That gap is enormous and nearly impossible to close. Fourth, you're building habits and discipline during the most habit-forming years of your life. The habits you build as a teenager stick with you the most. The discipline of training consistently, eating well, prioritizing sleep, recovery, these become part of who you are. They can carry into your studies, your career, your relationships, everything. You'll have all 3 pillars of life eventually sorted out because of this alone: health, wealth, and relationships. Fifth, your confidence and mental health improve dramatically. The research on exercise and mental health in teenagers is fucking overwhelming. Training consistently reduces anxiety, improves mood, reduces depression, improves sleep quality, and builds self-esteem. As a teenager, your brain is going through massive changes, and you're dealing with social pressure, academic stress, figuring out who you are. I'm telling you, having the gym as an outlet and having the confidence that comes from building a strong body is genuinely life-changing during these years. I'm a prime example of it myself. Let's not ignore the physical transformation aspect. When you start lifting seriously as a teenager, your body changes fast. You're building muscle, getting leaner, improving your posture, not having this gamer's posture, developing an athletic physique. This changes how people perceive you, how you can carry yourself, and how you feel about yourself. People treat you differently, especially when you're at a low body fat percentage. You get more respect, you're more attractive, you stand taller. Ironically, you might literally look taller just from improved posture and physical development. That's free height right there, before even wearing height boosters or even doing any surgery. The bottom line is this: the years you spend lifting as a teenager are some of the highest ROI, return on investment, years of your life. Investing in a foundation that pays dividends for decades. Don't waste them being scared of a myth. All right, so now that you know weight training is safe and you know why you should absolutely be doing it, let me give you the actual framework for how to start safely as a teenager. First off, master the fundamental movement patterns: squatting, hinging at the hips, pushing, and pulling. These movement patterns are the foundation of basically every effective exercise. That means learning how to squat with good form before you load up a big barbell, learning how to hip hinge properly before you deadlift heavy, learning how to press with good shoulder engagement before you bench press max weight. Complicated, but it does require patience. Spend your first few months focusing on technique overload. Your ego might want to go heavier, but your future self will thank you for building the right foundation, because I'm telling you, once you get injured, lifting might not ever be the same afterwards. You might have to compensate in a lot of different areas, and I know you don't want that. Second, use weights that are challenging but completely controlled. As a beginner, you should be able to complete every rep with full control and good form. If your form breaks down, the weight is too heavy. Simple as that. Remember, keep controlling the eccentric without going overboard. There's no benefit to using weights that you can't control, and there's real risk to your joints and, in rare cases, your growth plates. Stay in ranges where you're training hard but always in full control of the movement. Third, follow an actual structured program, not just random exercises you see on social media, not just some half-ass thing you thought is good. A proven program that is designed to balance muscle groups, manage recovery, and provide progressive overload in a safe and systematic way. If you need to pay for the program, do it. It's better than risking making a shit program yourself. Listen, there are tons of great beginner programs designed specifically for teens. Fourth, take your recovery seriously. Most people love to underestimate sleep. They just want to get the most done, blah, blah, blah. Sleep is when you literally just recover everything. Sleep 7 to 9 hours every night. This is especially important as a teenager because that's when your growth hormone is most active. Anyway, you're literally growing during sleep. Do not sacrifice sleep for anything. Do not sacrifice sleep for anything. More important than any cardio. This is also a big point right here, and it's to eat enough food to support your training. A lot of teenage guys, including myself at 14, 15, when I was trying to starve myself to lose weight, eat way too little and wonder why they're not growing. You need calories, you need protein, you need carbs to fuel your training. Do not restrict your food intake. I wish that I would have had a great diet growing up the whole time. I could have been an inch or two taller already. I could have looked better, had better health markers, developed better this and that. I fucked up. My parents fucked up, but it's not their total fault. They were miseducated. Fifth, show up consistently. 3 to 4 days a week of solid training beats 6 days of random half-assed workouts every single time. Build the habit of consistent training over trying to maximize every single session and going super scientific and specific on everything. You have time. You're young. You don't need to rush this shit. Guys who win in the long run aren't the ones who train the hardest in month 1. They're the ones who kept showing up month after month and year after year. And if possible, learn from someone more experienced, whether that's a knowledgeable older lifter, a good personal trainer, or even just consuming quality educational content on technique on YouTube. Getting your form checked early prevents bad habits and reduces injury risk significantly. Don't let your ego get in the way of this. If you genuinely need help, hire someone. Do something. It does not matter. I want to take a quick moment to address the parents who are watching this or the teens whose parents are concerned about them lifting. If you're a parent watching this, I completely understand your concern. You want to protect your kid. And when you hear something that sounds scary, your instinct is to be cautious. But the science is clear, the medical establishment is clear, and the practical reality is clear. Properly supervised weight training for teenagers is safe and beneficial. It builds strong bones, improves cardiovascular health, reduces injury risk in sports, builds confidence, and establishes lifelong healthy habits. The risk isn't in lifting, the risk is in doing it recklessly. Teenagers following a real proven program, learning proper technique, using appropriate weights, and getting enough sleep and food, there's no legitimate concern about stunted growth or serious injury. What you should actually be more concerned about as a parent is your teenager being sedentary. Way too many teenagers are sedentary in the modern generation, sitting for 12 plus hours a day, not moving, getting no physical activity. That is what creates long-term health problems, not the damn gym. Anything, encouraging your teenager to train early is one of the most important things you can do for their physical and mental health. So does lifting stunt your growth as a teenager? Nope. The research is extensive and consistent. Properly done weight training has no adverse effect on your growth rates or your height. Multiple decades of research support. The myth persists because of word of mouth and outdated information, not because of science. Your height is determined by genetics and hormones, specifically growth hormone IGF-1. Everyday activities, including weight training, do not change your genetic height potential. The only real risk is serious acute injury from being reckless. And most importantly, lifting as a teenager is one of the greatest advantages you can give yourself. You have optimal hormones, incredible recovery, and the ability to build a foundation that compounds for decades. So stop holding fucking back. Stop letting a myth keep you out of the gym. Start training now. Do it properly, be consistent, and let the results speak for themselves. And shock your classmates. Now, if you want more information on how to maximize muscle growth and height on more of the diet side of things, go check out this video right here of me eating healthy for 1 year straight. Now go lift, your growth plates will be just fine. See ya.